Today I had the privilege, no, the honor, yes, the honor to speak to Mats Evensson, horror mystery writer hailing from Gothenburg, Sweden, of the new novel, the debut novel of The Beast of St. Ender, which is actually on sale right now at Amazon, the ebook for 99 cents. I've read the book. It's fantastic. Highly recommend it. So go pick it up. The deal is good until January 28th, so you only have a few days left. But in this interview, we speak about his latest novel. We speak about his writing process, inspiration, favorite books, and so much more. And you can check out the chapter selection below. I tried to make some kind of order of this interview to make navigation a little bit easier. But without further ado, here is my interview with Mats Evensson. Hey, everybody. Today I am talking with Mats Evensson right here, horror writer, with his debut book called The Beast of St. Ender right here. My camera focused. So welcome, Mats. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, thanks for having me here. Well, my name is Mats Evensson, obviously. Always awkward to say your Swedish name. I'm wondering if you're going to do it in an English accent. My name is Mats Evensson, but it really isn't. It's Mats Evensson. And I am I guess I'm a full-time writer now. I should be teaching, but I'm not anymore. And I live in Gothenburg, Sweden, where it's currently, I don't actually know what time it is. I'm going to have to check. Yeah, it's 11 p.m. So it's completely pitch black outside. And, well, we're approaching the wolf hour.
The Wolf Hour. Well, that's a
Yes.
great segue because there is, in fact, a wolf-like creature on the cover of your book. So why don't we kick it off, and why don't you tell us a little bit about Beast of St. Ender, what it's about, why people should read it, and maybe like what inspired you to write it in the first place?
Well, if I can remember all those questions.
I'll remind
And
you,
I'm
don't worry.
totally not reading off the side here.
Of course
Well,
not. Of course not.
oh, it's about. That's cool. No, all right. So the Beast of Saint Ender is set in England in 1905, Edwardian era, um, and it's about a police inspector whose name is James Huxley, who um, is a miserable son of a bitch. Pardon my French. And he comes to this island to drink the rest of his career and life away. But when a young boy is brutally and mysteriously murdered, Huxley sees the case as his way to get off the island, maybe restart his career. But a hellish presence, lovely graphics there, um, this hellish presence is stalking him, and yeah, it gets really hairy. I think I described it as a intense and gripping
There you go.
of old
Intense.
wounds, dark magic, and evil lurking in the shadows.
There we go. The Beast of St. Ender.
Yep.
Awesome. So what inspired you to write this book? This is your first book that you've actually published. I'm sure it's not the first one you've written, but why
Mm.
this one? What brought it to mind? I know we chatted a little bit offline, and you were talking about some of these ideas come to you in nightmares.
Yes. Great question, Conan. Um, Still funny. So yeah, this was inspired by a nightmare I had, and it's actually a method I use for thinking up ideas. Um,
Heavy
I
nightmares?
go, yeah, when you nap during the day and you have these, I guess they're called lucid dreams, uh,
Yeah, sure.
or
Yeah,
maybe that's just sex
lucid.
dreams.
Lu- no, lucid. I believe it's when you are aware that you're dreaming.
Right. Yeah, so it's
Hence lucid.
neither sex or I'm in control,
I
but
mean, I don't know about the content of those dreams. It could be anything,
it gets
but
hot, man. It gets hot. But yeah, no. So basically, when you take a nap during the day, or at least when I do, I have these really weird dreams, um, and so I write them down. And um, so I had a dream about being chased by this fella, and thought, okay. When I woke up, I wrote that down and um, basically thought about like who is this creature? What is this creature? Can I turn this into a story? Uh, yeah, and it sort of evolved from there.
got it. So a lot of times that's how I work too, as well as is inevitably I'll have a scene. A scene will
Mm,
come to me, a dream just pop in my head, however it may. Maybe I'll be inspired by something I read or watch, but then it kind of just grows from that. Is that pretty much how you write? You'll have like just kind of a really brief scene and then a hook or something, and then the ideas will grow from there.
yes, definitely.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, it's just the very initial idea that that sort of comes from the dream, or it tends, at least for me, it tends to get a lot more involved and complicated. Um, as you know, you've read the book,
Hmm.
so you know that the beast has a backstory,
Right.
um, which it didn't. It didn't have that in my dream, for example. Um, so I usually take the idea and try to ground it in some sort of mythology or reality. Um,
Is that is
and
that is that usually something you concoct on your own, or do you think you ground it using because this is it takes place in a historical setting? Do you try to look for folklore or things that
yes,
further ground it? Okay,
yes, definitely. Um, and luckily, like in Northern Europe and Great Britain, uh, we do have a lot of super interesting folklore and folk
definitely,
horror, basically.
definitely.
Um, I'm just gonna cough like a maniac. Hold on.
I can add a sound effect of you coughing, even though it was
Super.
muted. No one heard it.
Yeah, I bet you could probably hear it even though you didn't have the sound on.
I heard nothing. I heard nothing. So the mute button on your headset works well.
Excellent. Yeah. Yes. So I do that quite a lot. I try to put the monster in some sort of mythology that already exists. I like that. I like the I like explaining, or when other people explain in media, like oh, this is complicated to explain, which is weird. But basically, I like rational explanations to irrational phenomena. So, say for example, the glitching cat in The Matrix. Um, we've all had deja vu, but in The Matrix, it's explained like a glitch in the Matrix and
Right,
blah blah blah.
right.
And I really like that.
Yeah,
There's a
that's cool.
book. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere here, where werewolves are explained as uh, just really weird dogs, basically, with sort of human-like features. And during the bubonic plague, they um, they ran after people and started killing them, and that's why people got so scared of them, and etc. I like to rationalize the irrational
No, that's
uh,
cool. I
in
like
my
that
stories.
concept. So speaking on folklore mythology, would you find that you're drawn to the Nordic? You being from Sweden, do you enjoy that, or do you enjoy other? Considering this takes place in in Britain or the British Isles. Um, are you drawn to mythologies that aren't native to where you are, or?
Well, um, good question. So I don't really know. I think that I'm drawn to uh, exploring myths that might not be or haven't already been explored so much. Like, it's tricky to talk about this book without going into spoilers. Um, but like, we all know about Dracula, for example. He has been explained a billion times by now,
Mm-hmm.
and the concept of vampires. But um, there's so much more mythology to explore that we really haven't. Um, I was actually looking, like, a couple of months ago, I was looking at Ukrainian folklore for whatever reason, and I wrote a short story about the Mavka,
Mm.
which uh, which is something that I've never seen in. Um, I haven't seen anyone write about that, even though it's several hundred years old. It's a very interesting legend. Um, but people get too like fixated on the werewolf, the zombie,
Right.
the vampire.
Yep.
Uh, so I think that there is a lot to explore.
Yeah.
But I will say that uh, I know that like Native Americans have a whole lot of uh, like mythology worth exploring.
Yeah.
I don't think that I'm the one to do that. There's no, I don't think I'm the right guy for that.
Well, we have Stephen Graham Jones, who is
Yeah.
Native American, and he seems to be very focused on that. But speaking of that, I think it's being from the United States, right, where our mythologies are kind of just a a transformation, a twisting of European or very, as we migrated over here, we took
Mm,
our folklore with us, which is kind of cool. That's kind of the premise of, Neil Gaiman's American Gods, right? Where
hmm.
these were brought over and then they're kind of transformed through the lens of modernity, I guess. So I always found that like Appalachian folklore and stuff was really cool and not
Hmm.
explored nearly as much because again, a lot of it does borrow from European and but kind of Native American clearly, but it's just its own thing. And I remember when I read Krampus, that book takes place in the Appalachia area, even though it's about Krampus and Santa Claus and so on and so forth. But
Yeah.
yeah, he took it interesting places, and I think if I were to ever write horror, that would be what I would lean into, just to, at the very least, spark ideas. So
Yeah. Exactly. Uh, yeah. So that's basically where I'm coming from. And I mean, this is off topic, but like when I found that role playing game we talked about like 2 days ago,
yeah, yeah,
Vasan,
vast, yeah,
I was like, oh my God. I know about quite a lot of these monsters, um, or beings rather. Um, they have the Church Grim, which I thought was awesome. Look at that.
so this is actually this is the art book. So by
Okay.
and I'm sure you can pronounce his name better than mine.
Johan Egerkrans.
There you go.
That's right.
So this is actually the art book. He does all the art in the game, and
Hmm.
but the game itself was kind of inspired at least by his artwork. So
Yeah,
cool stuff.
it is cool stuff. Um, yeah, I mean, when when I was a small Swedish child back in 16th century, uh, my mom would tell me she she lived in a small village, and she would tell me the story of when she was walking home through the woods at night. Uh, one day she was alone, and suddenly she saw 7 red vests between the trees. So she snuck up and watched 7 trolls dance on a tree stub. Stub the right word?
Stump?
Stump, exactly.
Tree stump?
Yeah, 7 trolls with red vests. So that sort of, even though it probably wasn't true, and she, last time I asked her, she denied it completely, but uh, like we're not that far away from believing in those kind of
Uh-huh.
like mythologies,
Yeah.
which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
Like, uh,
Yeah, I think
we're
it's great.
not, we don't have to go back to like the Middle Ages or
Mm-hmm.
100 years even to find people who actually believe in trolls and the church grim and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just an aside. It's,
No, that's
but yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
But moving on. Speaking of this book again, that I'll keep flashing to the screen. Oh, it's on sale right now, guys. By the way, I forgot to mention that. I will definitely add a little intro to the video so you'll know. But it's let us know, when is this thing going to be on sale? How much? For how long?
I believe right now from the 23rd to the 28th. No, the 28th. There's no S in there. Uh, that's, yeah, it's 99 cents for that week or for this
Okay.
week.
Awesome.
Um,
So you guys can pick this up for $1. You have a whole week. But I would like to
I
also comment on the awesome artwork here. So
Yes,
he did this art himself. It's a cool full spread. You see the protagonist on the back, Mr.
God,
Huxley.
that looks
But
really nice.
yeah, it looks awesome. But
If I may say so myself, yes.
but so knowing you are an artist, you
Mm,
are a writer. Would you say
yes.
that you divide you kind of straddle that line? Do you dabble a lot in art, or do you find that you're dedicating yourself mostly to writing? Because I know for myself, when I was a kid, I drew a lot, I played music, I wrote stories, and at some point, at least for myself, I said, "Hey, I need to really go all in with one of these things." Right? I don't have enough time in the day. So, how do you describe yourself, artist, writer?
Oh, good question. So last time you asked this, I went on a super long rant and um, got super into the weeds. But I look at Brahm a lot, I think. Um, he's a writer, he's an artist. He's clearly, I'm going to say he's better at painting than he is at writing. Um, but he's clearly like above average in both. Um, so if I can, I would very much like to straddle that,
Okay.
uh, you know, that line.
So do you see in
And
the future maybe like Brahm-esque novels released where you do a series of paintings that are um, part of the novel?
yes, that's something that I actually thought about for the Beast, but yeah, because I call it the Beast. But I realized that it's gonna probably get expensive to format or to print images in the book.
Hmm.
And it just got complicated. And I thought, nah, forget it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it would be really cool to have illustrations, um, like chapter headings or something cool like that,
Yeah.
like he does.
I think it's
Um,
probably because I know his books are interspersed with glossy paper where the art is, and then the matte paper where the text is, and that I could see that being pricey for sure.
yeah.
But
Um,
yeah.
you just made me think of the novelization for Sleepy Hollow. Um, there are photos in the middle
Oh,
on
yeah.
these, on a
Those
photo paper.
yeah, I remember the movie tie-ins. They'd have like a right in the middle of the book. They just have this a few pages of shots of the movie or whatever it may be.
Yeah, which is super super strange,
Yeah,
because I mean most of the those novelizations, and I read a lot of novelizations, but most of them are based on earlier scripts. They're not based on like Johnny Depp as the constable. So you can end up with descriptions of characters that don't match the photos. So you're taking out of the story completely, uh, and it's really stupid. Uh, but it's also a lot of fun to read those novelizations. They're
yeah,
so uninspired.
yeah.
They really aren't.
It's not glamorous work, I'm sure.
No.
But
Uh,
I want to talk a little bit about the genre of this book. So it's a
mm,
mystery, but it's a
mhm.
mystery with horror
Yep.
sort of at the base of it, at the foundation of it. So why? But also, it takes place at the turn of the century.
Mm.
Why are you drawn to that particular time period, as well as horror? I mean, does the horror just come from you have these nightmares, and that's the genre you lean to, or is there something special about that genre outside of that to you?
Well, I'm drawn to horror because um, mm, how do I put this? Well, horror as a genre, writing wise anyway, is uh, different from any other genre, because in horror, the protagonist is reacting to a monster. The protagonist is just going about his day, and then the monster starts attacking. Whereas in any other genre, you have a character who is given a quest through the inciting incident. He has to go do something. So he's acting. He's not reacting, he's acting. Um, so I wanted to do something a little bit different. But then, of course, I realized that I'm not that good of a writer, that I can just write a horror novel. Um, I need to. That's why I made it into a mystery, which I'm much more comfortable writing. In a mystery, you do have a protagonist. You have a police officer who uh, is tasked with investigating the crime. Um, so it turns out that I'm much more comfortable writing traditional. Um, uh, yeah, the big general genre of like going on a quest and the
Right.
hero's journey.
Right.
Um, but um, but I'm also like drawn to blood and gore and scaring people. So that is why it became a mystery with horror elements, I'd say.
Got it. So what on that note of horror, what frightens Mats? What scares you? I think
Um,
I know the answer, but I'm curious what you're gonna say.
what does scare me? Well, I am claustrophobic, as we all know.
That's the one.
Um,
That's the one.
yeah, um, that's the big one, I think. And
So
it's so uncomfortable that I can't really write about it. I tried to, but I tried to do it for NaNoWriMo this year, but I abandoned that because it involved watching YouTube videos of people getting stuck in tunnels under the mountains, and it freaked me the fuck out.
yeah.
Couldn't do it.
So we can never expect a cavern exploration horror novel from you then.
Well, no, actually, no. Uh, it just no, it doesn't work.
Not gonna happen.
No, I know you recommended a movie to me,
Yeah, there's a funny story behind that film. It was called
and
The Borderlands, I believe, but then they changed the name for some reason because when I saw it way back, it was The Borderlands. and then it changes
Hmm.
something else. I can't remember the title. But the
Yeah.
funny thing about that is he watched the entire thing. It's a great kind of um, cosmic horror almost. I feel like it is Lovecraftian to a degree
Yeah.
because of the way it culminates, right? How it ends. But he didn't watch
I don't know
the
how it
most
ends.
pivotal scene, the very ending, because he's like, I can't stand it. These guys are crawling through these caves. Um, yeah,
Well,
that
I
made my
stopped
day.
watching when someone just went, "I'm stuck," and he's in this super tight tunnel, and I believe the ground is all bones. Or maybe
Yeah.
that's another disgusting movie I had to watch in preparation for writing that story. But I was like, nope, I can't do it because at some point I am going to have to go to bed. And I really like to sleep, and I'm not going to be able to if I keep watching. I'm sure it's a lovely movie. I don't care.
All right. Well, I'd like to ask too, because I'm always curious. As writers, as creators, we're always inspired by the people who came before us. So,
Hmm.
who or what inspires not just the story, but like the genre and you writing and what kind of stories you gravitate toward?
Um, well, I would say that it's changed over the years. I used to love fantasy. I used to love Terry Pratchett, and I still love Terry Pratchett. But uh, something happened in the '90s. So this is before cell phones. For those of you who are young who are watching this, um, so I watched Seven, and that the movie Seven from '95, I want to say, and it just blew my mind. It's so creepy and it's so smart. It's not a horror. Well, it's got horror elements, but it's not a horror. It's more of a thriller, right? And it was so clever, and that just made me. I mean, it stayed with me for weeks afterwards. And then at some point, I read the book Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane, which I don't know. It's somewhere up here. I don't know where it is, but anyway, and that too is incredibly clever. And I don't want to spoil anything for for anyone who hasn't watched it, but I mean, he really thought that through all the way. Um, and so when I started writing, I knew that I wanted to make it clever, like have a mystery, um, but also leave clues for the reader out in the open. So, for example, in Shutter Island, the movie, um, I can't even remember who directed it.
Shutter Island.
Um,
Oh yeah, I don't remember either. I just know Fincher did Seven.
yeah, um, but you can see in Shutter Island, you can see that characters are fake drinking water. They're miming having a glass of water, for example. And as a watcher, you don't know, is this because they're all mental patients. Um, so you don't know, are they just like, are they meant to do that? Or did the prop department just go, oh, wait, we don't have a glass, you're going to have to fake it? So it gets you sort of uncomfortable, but you don't know why. You don't know if you're supposed to be uncomfortable or like, yeah, basically you want to be uncomfortable finding clues that you can't really make sense of. And there are clues in the book. I bet you haven't caught all of them. Um,
I've
so
only seen
that's
the film, but I really knowing that like in hindsight, I want to go back and read the novel just to see how I feel about it, and because I know, the concept, right, the reveal
Mhm.
already, it'll be interesting going back reading it that way.
Yeah. Um, and of course, Shutter Island, if you think about like you were asking about inspiration, and it is a very real inspiration or very direct inspiration in that, it, like, my book is about a policeman or police detective going to a remote island to investigate a murder. And there are no murders in Shutter Island, but he's there to solve the mystery.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And yeah.
I'll go ahead. I was going to say it's interesting because you named two inspirations that are more set in the modern times, whereas this
Yes.
one is not in the modern times. So, what draws you to that particular time period?
Well, this is not a rehearsed answer at all. So, the Victorian era, no, but okay, so it's really interesting because the Victorian era is a uh, a time period where the old and the new meet, and I guess that's every time period, obviously. But you have, on one hand, you have these technical achievements, um, and I don't have the Wikipedia page open, but you have these like achievements in medicine. You have penicillin. What's it called? Penicillin.
Yeah, penicillin.
Um,
Yeah.
um, it's called penicillin in Swedish. Makes no sense. You have, I mean, you have the telegraph, the railway. Um, what else? You have so many like technical achievements, but you also have mysticism, spiritualism that is coming from as a reaction to the rationalism in the time period before. And these two, like, very contrasting thoughts or concepts really collide, and they don't fit at all, really. This the spiritualism and the rational mind over matter thinking, and that makes the Victorian era super interesting for as a horror setting, as a mystery setting. Like when we think about Sherlock Holmes, for example, um, the greatest mind, right? He's super smart. But the year his first book, A Study in Scarlet, came out um, as a series in a magazine, was also the same year that the Order of the Golden Dawn, or whatever, a Satanist society, um, or a spiritualist society that Conan Doyle was actually a member of, first started. And it's a weird concept, or it's a weird time when you can have like this, like a satanic society, which is actually in the first Sherlock Holmes movie with Junior. What's his face? Um, the American actor.
You mean the latest one, Robert Downey Jr.?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Robert
Gotcha.
Downey Jr. He's fighting someone called Blackwood, and he is the leader of the Golden Dawn, and that's the society, or well, based on that society. So you have these two super strange ideas um, that are sort of trying to mesh and trying to like coexist, and that makes it for a very nice period to have horror and like folk horror, especially. God, what a long answer.
No, it's cool. It's cool. It's not the answer I expected, and that's what made it interesting. So
Definitely didn't rehearse that in the shower.
I have kind of uh, an out there question, not super out
Hmm.
there, but a friend of mine asked this question of me recently, so I'm gonna ask it to you because I thought it was clever. If there is a writer, living or dead, who could read The Beast of Saint Ender and critique it, give you some advice, their opinion, who would it be?
I still don't know. Uh, yeah. What did I say last time? I can't
I
remember.
think when we chatted, you said the author of Enola Holmes.
Oh, right. All right.
I thought it was going to be Sir Arthur Conan Doyle,
Yes.
but I was it
But
was
the thing is that people often, they don't really often, but my editor, for example, uh, she she's American, so she read the novel and also got like associations to Sherlock Holmes. And was like, yeah, I want to see more of his brilliance as a detective. Um, and he is not meant to be Sherlock Holmes. He's meant to be an alcoholic schlub who uh, who is not brilliant. So, and I think that if Sir Arthur read my story, he would probably figure it out in no time.
so you think you'd
These,
look at it from that angle? He'd be like, "Oh,
yeah,
terrible
like,
mystery. It's super easy."
this mystery is too simple, dude.
Yeah.
Uh, you definitely call me dude. Um, but yeah, I think. Well, so the lady who wrote the Enola Holmes mysteries, for example, or um, oh my God, what's her face? It's weird because they're all in alphabetical order, yet I still.
Oh,
Uh,
you're better than me. Mine are in no order whatsoever.
so I'm thinking about. I think her name is Clark. She wrote Jonathan
Susanna Clark?
Strange.
Yeah, Susanna
Yes,
Clark. Yep.
Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Uh, or yeah, she just like the lady who wrote Enola Holmes. I am gonna have to look up her name because I keep forgetting. I think it's Nancy Springer, but I could be wrong. But uh, they both write with that 19th century uh, style of prose, and for whatever reason, that is what really attracts me because I think that I'm pretty good at English and I can write modern English. Um, but what I really want to do, yeah, it's Nancy Springer. What I really want to write is like 19th century, like super authentic for that time period. Uh, I want you to be able to pick up one of my books and go, when was this written? Because it sounds like it's written in 1887. Of course, this book is written in very modern English. There's not a lot of like weird long words or um, but that's something that has evolved over time. Like the prequel to this book that I'm writing right now is much more like steeped in that kind of old-fashioned prose, I would say.
Okay. So then it
Um,
would be Springer would be your
yeah,
pick.
Springer and Clark,
Clark.
uh, definitely. And
Okay.
then, I mean, if Fincher wants to give me a call after he's read it and discuss, I mean, sure, yeah. If he pays for the call, I'm not
Well,
gonna.
of course. Well, I want you to take us back in time.
Mm,
Take us back to young Mats. And what inspired him? What was your first memory of being kind of just when you started writing, you're like, this is what I want to do. This is what I enjoy doing. I want to dedicate more time to it.
yeah. Um. Well, so when I was 10, I want to say, or possibly 11, uh, one of my teachers gave me a not a textbook, like a notebook that I was supposed to write in. 100 pages, I know because I counted them. Um, and at the start of the school year, said, write a book. You like to write, um, so write a book. And I did. And it was basically a ripoff of Return of the Jedi. But um, at the last day of school that year, I got to read it in front of the entire class. And when we talk about like education and how to support uh, kids, uh, like having that sort of reaction, watching people listen to the words that I've written, um, was of course very, very encouraging. Um,
So you read all 100 pages?
yeah, my
Wow.
teacher had probably given up uh, by that time. She was like, "It's the last day of the year. Whatever, dudes. Just yeah, listen to this kid. I'm gonna go outside and smoke for 4 hours. Have a great time." Um,
Wow.
yeah, I plowed through that book in front of them. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how much. I don't know what else someone could have done for me at that age to encourage me to keep writing. I know that as a teacher myself nowadays, um, I have uh, when I see great writing in students, or I don't see great writing in students, but when I see great writing by students, um, I ask them if they want to read out loud to the class, and usually they say, "No, no, I can't." And I was like, "Can I read it then? Can I read it out loud?" Because I want them to see the reaction that I got, hopefully. Um, because it's such a, I don't know, it's such an amazing thing to watch. Uh, like this direct feedback on your
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. I think that's what's really interesting about novels writing in general that film doesn't have, right? It's that,
Mm,
when you're sitting down to read a book, it's a unique experience to you. And so, in the example you gave, when you're taking the writing of someone else and reading it aloud, you're maybe speaking it in such a way that they didn't necessarily think of. And
yeah,
to a degree, they're even experiencing it in a different way than they did when they were writing it. And so that's what
yeah,
I've always found for me interesting about writing is that not only do you not need to have a bunch of funding and hire a massive crew and all this and that, but it's something that you can, I don't know. I mean, you experience writing in a solitary fashion, but then
mm,
also when people are experience it on their own, you always wonder like, what are they seeing? Because you know what you
yeah,
saw, right, with these characters. What are they seeing? How is it making them feel? And I think that's part of the coolest thing about the written word. I think is that and it has endured. I mean, it's been around for so long, and here we are, still with paper
yeah,
books. I mean, granted, I read a lot of ebooks. I know you read a lot of ebooks, but it's funny to think that the medium hasn't changed a whole lot, honestly.
yeah. It is super interesting. But actually, on that note, because I was thinking about this quite a lot. Like back in the day, um, let's say the 17th century,
That is back in the day, yeah.
like the way. Okay, so for a story that I tried to write earlier this year, I I read a bunch of like I read The Discovery of Witches, which is a reprint of a 17th century witch trial in England. And I noticed that at the end of chapters, the last paragraph at the end of a chapter would be center aligned and wedged shaped.
Oh, wow.
So there was an there's a visual sort of component that, like, because that wedge shape is obviously just decoration. It doesn't like provide any like narrative interest, but people thought of the whole book, like the way the words were formatted in a much more like decorative sense.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
No, it does. Yeah.
Like nowadays, when we go to format our ebooks, we just go, yeah, reflowable, whatever. Who cares? We know we can't even change the fonts. There's not even any point to doing that. Um, but back in the day, they really, oh yeah, is that House of Leaves?
Yeah, I was going to talk about this because
Mm,
I mean, this is a if you guys out there have not read this book, highly recommend it. I owned this book I think it was 20 years ago. I got it as a Christmas gift. And
mm,
just I'm not sure why I never read it. I guess maybe I was a little bit daunted. I mean, if you look inside, the formatting is just absolutely insane. I don't know,
oh,
I guess I'm
exactly.
blowing.
Just
But
yeah.
it's doing what you're saying. It's using not just the written word, but the formatting of it to convey a mood.
Mm,
And this one, when I finally got around to it, it's a dense book. It's long. It's hard to get through, but it totally blew me away. And it's cool to see people still playing with the white space and
yeah, because
right.
that white space is. I read a Twitter thread not long ago, but then I forgot the term that they used. But there is a term for all the all the text that isn't the prose, or rather all the content in a book and on a book that isn't like the story. So the copyright page, the the dedication, the acknowledgement page, the back matter, the front matter, and I don't know. To me, that is a. It's not just utilitarian. It's a like for me. What I want you to feel is that as soon as you get the book, the experience has started. So, and I'm going to show a little Easter egg now that not a lot of
Oh,
people have found out. But if you go to the copyright page, uh,
I'll
which
go there
is
in my
no,
copy too. We'll see here.
that's the one. You'll read it says copyright, blah blah blah, all rights reserved. This is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to actual places, events, and persons should be a comma there, by the way, places, events, living or dead is entirely coincidental, except for the beast. The beast is real. So
I like
it's
that.
already started. Like, uh, so it's part of the narrative. Um, and I really like that idea because I don't think that most people are not gonna find that out.
No,
Your
I didn't.
reviewers
I did
will.
not. Yeah, I read this book and I did not because typically we breeze through, the copyright and all that stuff. But you also did.
Yeah.
There's an afterword that you
Hmm.
did in a pretty clever way as well,
Yeah.
where you brought the character from the novel, like as if you're having a conversation with him.
Yeah.
So you
Uh,
kind of bookended it.
absolutely. Because it's not over until the fat lady sings, basically. Uh, but yeah, I've seen like some books. I mean, it's super super rare, but like on the copyright page, it might say, "By reading this book, you're signing your soul over to me," for example. Um, and I think that's awesome because people get so afraid of this copyright page.
Hmm.
Like, um, I see it a lot on internet forums, like on Reddit, where people ask, "Do I have to have a copyright page?" No, you don't. You don't even have to have a copyright page, and it's not a legal document. You can write whatever you want on it. You can. You don't have to have like a disclaimer or a copyright symbol, a copyright sign, nothing. Uh, it's just there for you to play with, for you to experiment with. Um, and if you want to write something really weird, like, oh, the beast is real, like you can do exactly that.
Yeah. So then would you say the motivation for you to do those kinds of things is, like you said, you want the experience of the book to start before you get to even, prologue or chapter one. So you want to
Yes.
take advantage of all this extraneous stuff. That's interesting. That's cool. I think
Yeah.
it works particularly with horror.
Mm.
Obviously, how you did it here is great. So that's funny. I did not notice it. So Easter egg. Let us know in the comments if you did pick this book up and you did catch that, because that
And
would be interesting.
there is another Easter egg, but you need to know Latin,
Oh,
and it's staring you right in the face uh, from I don't actually know what chapter it is, but it's somewhere near the beginning. And if you if you speak Latin, you can figure it out. Uh, yeah, you'll be a lot closer to finding the truth of this mystery long before the inspector gets to it. And yeah, I like that. I like that. I like that being clever.
hmm
Uh,
even if
and I'm not
nobody ever
saying that.
notices it, you know it's
Yeah,
there, right? So like for
exactly.
for example, here's another little Easter egg for my book, this A Song for the End of the World. Um, the name gives away a hint. Oh yeah, he's he's got it right there.
Weird
So
stuff
for you
bloody
guys out
everywhere.
there, the name chapters. So if you string all those together, those are lyrics for a song.
Right.
So if you take every chapter header and put them, vertically down or however you want to back, it will create a song, because the song for the end of the world. Plus the
Mm.
protagonist is singing a song to her younger sister in it, which I never write the lyrics to, but those are that's essentially what that. So yeah, I guess I kind of do it too. I didn't go as far as you did, which is awesome with the copyright though. And it's funny because I breezed right through it. It was just
Yeah.
right under my nose, literally, and
I
didn't
mean,
notice
most
it.
people who buy the ebook uh, are never going to see the copyright page because you set the first page to the first page of the prologue or the dedication or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, what's it called? The epigraph.
Oh, the
Oh yeah,
epigraph is like a quote, yeah, from
yeah.
from something else, yeah.
In my book, you should read the epigraph. Mm, essential reading. Don't just breeze through that. Um, but yeah, because I love all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like the treating the whole book as a work of art, not just the prose starting with chapter one. Like it's all part of it. It's all part of the experience,
I really
basically.
like that idea, and like I was saying, I mean, it may be one of those things that very few people notice, because you'll know that when you guys open an ebook, generally, I think you can overwrite this when you format, or when you export, but generally, when you open an ebook, it takes you to chapter one.
Yeah.
So it skips through the table of contents, the front matter, all of that stuff. So I guess consider scrolling back a few swipes, and there might be
Mm.
something there you missed. So it's something to consider looking at. I can definitely say that Mr. Mark Danielescu, I can't even pronounce his name. Mark Z. Danielescu has some crazy stuff in there too.
Yeah.
But
I haven't actually read that book. I
oh,
should.
you should. It was a slog, not in a bad way. It took me a long time to read it, because not only are many of the pages just packed with text, but
Mm.
it's a good sized book. It's a large
Yeah.
book. But yeah, it's a fantastic horror novel, multi layered for sure. So I wanted to ask you about writing and storytelling in general. So if you had to name one thing or a couple things, like as far as what do you value most in storytelling? Like when you're writing a book or when you're reading a book, is it plot, characterization? Are you trying to, is it the message, the theme? Is it just pure entertainment? what would it be?
Well, it's a boring but obvious answer. Obviously, you want interesting characters. Um, you, well, I say likable, but I'm probably thinking more about like sympathetic or empathetic.
Empathetic, yeah.
I want to empathize, to some degree, understand the main character. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to like them. They don't have to be, giving money to charity and loving puppies. But I want to understand who they are. Um, yeah, so obviously a big thing. But I will say that I do enjoy like literary. Uh, oh my god, forget the words. Um, but like guilty pleasures in the literary world. Like I read Regency romance, for example, which no man should ever admit to, or any person at all, by the way. But um, well, actually, so here's the thing: I love like Shutter Island level cleverness, um, and I love reading bleak and scary, and but I like a balanced diet. Here comes the food analogy. So, um, like Regency romance to me is comfort food, and I mean it's super predictable. You know exactly what's going to happen, uh, and there are no surprises. But a balanced diet doesn't mean that you only eat, kale and rye bread. Uh, you have to allow yourself candy sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, so I do like to read like comfort food stories. I also think that like rereading old books is a form of comfort food.
Yeah,
Um,
I would agree with that.
there's certainly no surprises, and I do that a lot with Terry Pratchett. You know, I love reading his stuff, and yeah. What was the question?
Well, no, I think you got it. I think you got it. Um, well, so I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you another thing that is regarding, let's see, where's my list of questions here? Oh, yeah, yeah. So when we write a novel, story, whatever it may be, we put it out in the world and we know it's done, we've released it, it's out there for everybody to consume. We generally have at least some kind of regret, something we wanted to change, even though we may not and probably should not go back and change it. Without any spoilers, is there anything you would like to go back and change with the Beast of Saint Ender?
Yes, the price. It should be a lot more expensive. No.
We
Well,
talked about that. I remember in the beginning. Yeah.
yeah. No. So in the Beast, there are three main characters. You have Inspector Huxley, and you have Constable Daniel Denholm, and you have his wife Claire. Those are the big POV characters. Um, and I wanted to, or at some point, I wanted to make Denholm, the constable, black instead of white because, uh, well, it would create interesting tensions and contrasts between him and uh, the lead character of Huxley. And also, well, anyway, um, it would have been interesting. The problem was that I couldn't find any records of black officers in England, police officers in England, from 1815 to 1978, where in 1978 the first British police officer who was black was hired. And before him, it was a guy in Scotland who was a constable for a couple of years. So even though the story, I'm not going to say it would have been better, but it would have been different if Denholm was black and not pasty white as he is now. But I couldn't, since I didn't have a historical precedent for it, I couldn't bring myself to write, yeah, historical accuracy got in the way basically of
Right.
a
Yeah.
good story. And of course, there is another problem to this. Am I the right person to write about racism and the experience of a young black man? I don't think so. Um, or well, I mean, who cares what the author looks like? But the problem is that since I've never experienced racism,
Right.
um, so I would have to borrow basically someone else's experience.
Right.
It would have felt, yeah, it would have felt fake,
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that.
contrived.
But yeah, I mean, on that note
Yep.
of authenticity or historical accuracy, clearly your books require a lot of research. So this is kind of I'm kind of leaning into the writing process part of the discussion where do you find yourself you get this nightmare. You get an idea of being chased through the woods by this ferocious beast.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, "Okay, I want to set it in this time period roughly in this location." Do you find yourself digging deep into the research of to fleshing out this time period before you get to the story, or do you kind of dive in with just the rough scaffolding or the skeleton of the story, and then kind of go back to edit or research, or is it interspersed throughout the process?
Well, yeah, it's a good question, and I've been thinking about this because um, I pick a year that I want to set the story in at random. All I know is that it's going to be in the 18th century somewhere. Um, but the next step is trying to find, um, try to learn about that year or like that 5 year period or something. But the problem is that not every year is written about in reference books, for example. Um, so, well, for example, I have access to a book called The Complete Servant. It's from 1825, and it's a great book if you're a servant in well in a manor, and it has it lists wages for every staff member. So butler and housekeeper and scullery maids and everyone. Uh, but of course, those wages I can't use them as reference if I want to set the book in like 1887. Um, but here's the problem: when you know a character's wage, you know so much about them, and suddenly, like you know where they live. Like, do they live in a house, apartment? Do they share a room with 14 other families? What do they eat? How do they dress? How do they walk around in the world? Basically, can they afford transportation? Uh, like, if you were poor in the East End of London in during the Victorian era, you would live and die there. You would probably never see the outside of London.
Hmm.
Um, but if I can't find what like the cost of living is for that time period, I will move on. I will go to a different year where I know that um, I have I can do more research and
Wow.
I can find out more.
So not finding the information will change the course of the narrative, as sometimes.
Uh, yes. Like at that stage, the narrative is so loose that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Um, but um, but yeah, like the example with making Denholm black, for example, that would have changed the narrative. Uh, but I mean, in the book I'm writing now, for example, there is a. So I was reading about 19th century England and education, and how a school class in the 1880s, how people were divided. Like when I say, when you think of a school class, you probably think of kids in one age group, right? Or all the kids in the class have the same age, basically, in plain English. Uh, but back in the good old days, it was merit based instead. So you could have uh, kids, old kids, young kids who couldn't read. They were in the same group in one corner of the classroom, and then you had kids who were good at reading. They could be over there. Good at maths. They were in that corner. So the teacher had to run around, and teach all these different subjects in one classroom.
Wow.
Um, and that became I mean, obviously a problem for this poor, overworked teacher. Uh, that never changed, by the way, in 140 years. But so they implemented something called a monitor system. And the monitor system is when a stronger student, um, which I shouldn't really say like stronger and weaker, but basically a more knowledgeable student uh, taught the uneducated students. So in this book that I'm writing now, when I realized that, oh yeah, this teacher can uh, he or she can assign a monitor, a student, so they can have a bit of a subplot, basically, um, and a budding like mentor student relationship. Um, that would never have happened if I hadn't done that research, because I wouldn't have found out about the monitor system.
Interesting. Yeah, I had no idea. That's cool.
Yeah.
Think about just how those historical elements. And now I kind of, in chatting with you about this, I understand why accuracy is so important because, if you were to concoct a scene that was more or less like, in a schoolhouse or, a classroom that was representative of modern day, you'd have a
Mm.
very, very different dynamic, uh,
Yeah.
for the story. So yeah, something to think about. And I guess on that note, with all of this research you do, let's
Mm.
say there's an author out there watching this right now, and they want to get into this genre. What do you recommend them to do? Like, what is the first step they should do? Maybe they've seen the Sherlock Holmes movie. Maybe they've read some of the stories, but they're like, man, I want to write this, but it seems so overwhelming. What piece of advice would you give them?
Well, I would say read books and stories from that era, um, or from that time period that you want to write about. Um, and for me, for example, it would be Sherlock Holmes, obviously. Um, but also read stories. Um, you don't have to read the stories that were written in that year. You can read modern stories set in that time period and hope that
They're accurate.
that author had done his or her research, right? Um, and take notes, basically. That's what I do. Like my Kindle is full of little notes for like different kinds of coaches that you would use? Like, basically, I mean, the easiest way to just would be to just write, they grabbed a coach, right? But to me, there's a difference between a Victoria and a Barouche and a Growler and etc. And yeah, so that becomes important. And I'll tell you why though. Like, uh, it's important to ground, especially when you're writing horror. It's important to ground your story in reality first, because that will make the monster feel more real. That's what's so scary, I think, about like Alien, for example, where you have the ship, the Nostromo. It looks lived in. It looks real, right? Same with Star Wars, by the way, but it's not horror. Um, so introducing a monster into a real environment will make the monster feel much more real, I think, than instead of, say, the TV show like Carnival Row
Hmm.
with Legolas and Cara Delevingne. It looks too clean.
Right.
So because the environment looks kind of sterile, or like it looks like movie sets basically. So you're distant.
Hmm.
Uh, you're not in the story. You're very aware that you're watching something, and suddenly when the monster comes, it's not that scary
Yeah, the
because you know
illusion
it's
is
CGI.
broken.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I'm really picky with that about a lot of shows because if I'm watching something and like you said, it doesn't feel authentic. If I don't feel like those people are, it seems to be a lot of times in settings that should be dirtier, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
like you said, the turn of the century or the Middle Ages, stuff like that. Things, even if it's a fantasy setting, where a lot of these fantasy settings are highly inspired by Western European, stuff. So you kind of just something feels off. Like I know with the Wheel of Time show, for me personally, The Witcher didn't work because of that, and it's unfortunate that they missed that because it seems to
Yeah.
be such a small thing to do. I mean, I'm not a production designer, but adding a little bit of dirt, making sure the hairs don't look like wigs or, something. Or even like in the new
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, where, Peter Jackson's vision of the elves was very singular, right? It's kind of like how we imagined elves. And I know with the Amazon series, they had all different haircuts. It wasn't this
Mm-hmm.
flowing long hair where they were like these majestic, regal,
Sure.
ancient creatures. They look like dudes with pointy ears. And it kind of
Yeah.
takes, I can appreciate what they're trying to do. They're trying to put a new coat of paint on something that we're all familiar with. But, sometimes it works because it works. And
Yeah.
changing it's not always the best thing. But,
I mean, it's even like you don't even have to go to the new show. You can just look at the difference between Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
oh, yeah.
The
Hmm.
Hobbit feels fake,
Yeah.
and it is fake.
Yeah.
Whereas in Bag End, the set was built a year before, and all the grass is real,
Hmm.
and it's actually lived in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And it's still there, I think, or at least some of it is. You can go visit it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they would be morons to tear it down. I mean,
I
it'd
know.
be tourist attraction number one.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so grounding a story in reality is very, very important, and that's why historical accuracy is important to me, and because I write historical fiction.
Hmm.
But if you look at, for example, The Strain, Guillermo del Toro and Chuck Hogan, maybe, who co-wrote a trilogy of books about vampires. They start with a well, the the first book starts with a conversation between a flight tower and ground crew, I think. and it's very authentic. And if you've seen the strain, you know that the first event in the strain is that a plane lands on in an airport, one of the big ones, LaGuardia, JFK, or something, um, and it's completely dead. And so they have to send in. They think it's a terrorist threat at first, and they have to send in, the bomb squad, the hazmat suit people. Um, but of course, it's about vampires. The book is about vampires, but by establishing that, uh, the authors establish to the readers that we've done all the research, we know all this shit. So when we tell you that, yeah, there are actual vampires, trust us, because everything else we've told you is true.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't the vampires be true?
Yeah.
And I love the first book uh, of that trilogy. I think it's super scary in parts, and they do it by first grounding. I keep wanting to say grinding, but that's the wrong word. Uh, yeah, it's
This
because
isn't
they
that kind of show, folks.
exactly. Yeah, but because they established like this is super super real,
Hmm.
then you can go beyond the real.
Yeah, it reminds me of a I think I read it in Stein on Writing. One of my favorite writing books is that he talks about specificity, be specific. So this isn't so
Yeah.
much about accuracy, but don't say the car, say the 93 Hyundai Coupe, right? Those
Hmm.
kinds of things make it feel like a real place. If you're not
Yep.
just saying the shirt, you're saying the polo or whatever it might be.
Hmm.
That's one thing I have to constantly remind myself of as well. Without getting too in the weeds, obviously, but just that kind of specificity makes it feel like a real lived-in world, and then hopefully that helps um, not break the illusion, right, that it's fiction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was just adding like when the radio is playing, make sure it's a song, and make sure it's a song that was actually uh, had actually been published by that
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
And suddenly, oh, now you're starting to do your research.
Yep.
Was this published then and there? Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I absolutely agree. Obviously.
Cool. We got a YouTube comment from Fermina Daza. Hopefully, I pronounced that right. But her question is, what is your writing routine? Do you set a schedule to force yourself to be productive, or just write when you're in the mood?
Well, basically, I roll out of bed, uh, turn on the computer, wake up Scrivener, and off we go. Basically, because I am obviously from Sweden. In case the watcher, had noticed, um, and because I'm writing in English, everything takes a bit longer, or a lot longer, I should say. So if I give myself like an hour, I'm gonna set aside an hour. I'm not gonna get anything done in an hour. I'm gonna write 200 words in an hour, and I'm gonna get stuck on a word or a phrase for something, and I'll either give up or open every like dictionary online, and it takes a very very long time. So I can't really be focused, if that makes sense.
No, yeah,
Uh,
makes sense.
so basically, from the moment I wake up and have fed the cat, I am in writer mode, basically. And then, yeah, around midnight is when I stop, basically. And I go, yeah, I'm giving up. I'm going to go play Banished instead, and watch YouTube. And then I might even come back like at 4 in the morning and go,
Wow.
actually, I could probably smash out a couple of words. And sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. Um,
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
I mean, that's cool that you have a process because I mean, I think we're always trying to figure out our own process, right? Like for me, I've tried, the first draft vomit
mm,
versus like meticulously writing a draft and editing while I'm writing, which, they say is a no-no. Um, I, it, it, I, I don't think there's any one way. And I would like to tell everybody out there, and I'm sure you'll agree that there's no one way to do it, right?
no,
Try them all and see if any of them work. Maybe they all won't work. Maybe you got to create your own routine, or maybe it's a mix up. It's a mix of two different ones or three different ones.
no,
I still struggle with that. Like, well, what? How should I approach this book? How detailed should the outline be before I start writing prose? Um, do I need an outline? All of these questions. Do I write for an hour, or is it like you, Mats, where it's, hey, I just leave Scrivener up all day long and pick away at it, you know?
no.
Um, but yeah, it's always a challenge, and sometimes it gets in the way of just going, starting. Oh, you're muted. I think you must have hit your.
How about now?
Yeah, there you go. Now I can hear you.
Okay. God, I am such a technical whiz. Um, but I was gonna ask. Speaking of outlines, have you ever written an outline that you have veered off from so much that you had to sort of reel it back in and start from like the middle again, or
Yeah,
something?
yeah.
Like, has the book suddenly just turned in another direction, and you're happily writing until, wait a minute, that's not the story I want.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, so it's that happened with the current book I'm writing, which is the sequel to this A Song for the End of the World, where and really it comes down to knowing characters. So for me, this is probably the most the biggest cast I've ever written in a very small space. So there's about 6 or 7 people, but they're not just people that pop up here out throughout the story. Like they're all in this confined space. So I have to learn how to balance them. And, I'd have the protagonist going down a certain direction, and then I would inevitably get mixed up with, or messed up with these other characters. Well, I need to understand this person. And
Mm,
and because I don't understand this person, this event in the story wouldn't happen yet, or it wouldn't happen at all. And so I found that to be a massive challenge. It wasn't so much that I got a clever idea that completely changed the course of the story, but it
mm,
was more about when I was outlining stuff before I wrote prose, it all looked fine and dandy, but it was
yeah,
because I didn't know the characters quite as well as I should
exactly.
have. And then
Yeah.
and discovering who those people are really informed the story, and I found myself like, shit, I got to start over. And so I've
Mm,
started that book over numerous times, and who knows, maybe I will again.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and I think, as you know, I've taken the story I'm writing now. I've thrown out the second and third act, and the reason is just like you say, that I didn't know the character. Uh, so the weird stuff that she gets up to, uh, because she was a blank page basically. Uh, she could do anything. She could react in any way. But once I went and really talked to myself about, like, okay, establish who this person is first, instead of finding out, like, establish, is she like extrovert or introvert, for example. Is she shy or extrovert, I guess. Um, like, establish that first. Know your character first. And I believe even, like, it's Story Grid, I want to say,
Hmm.
that starts there, like the first chapter or something is like, know your characters. Like, that's the first step. um and they're very, very accurate about that.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's hard for me anyway, to know my characters until I've started exploring them in the story. So
Yeah.
it's very difficult for me. And this is why I tend to not outline in a super detailed manner before I start writing, is because I can't view a story that way, right? I
Mm,
can't say, hey, I need to create a cast of 6 characters and balance them out and give them traumas and all of this stuff. I like literally need to be in the scenes and see them walking around and talking, and that's how I figure them out, and that's why I tend to do a lot of free writing. But yeah, knowing your characters is super important, like everybody says. But for me, I can't do that in the pre-production phase all the time. I might have like an
yeah.
idea or a sketch of a character, but I don't fully know who they are until I write them saying lines, right? Or see what they're doing, you know?
It's weird, or well, it's not weird, but it's interesting that we sort of have the same idea about that because I've started and restarted the book I'm writing now, I think 4 times. And the only thing that is left from the first draft is names of characters, basically.
Wow.
But it's not, um, yeah. And like you said, I didn't know the character when I first started, but uh, the reader, I guess, uh, they don't know the process. They don't know that I started with a completely different character with the same name as the one they're reading. Um, but it took me like 3 complete drafts to understand who the character was,
Yeah.
and now I'm on my 4th complete draft, and
Wow.
hopefully I know who this character is now.
Yeah.
But it because like you said, like uh, we get to know the characters on the page when we
Hmm.
write, but then we have to rewrite
Hmm.
to uh, to make that sort of consistent.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's a long and stupid process, I think. Or
Yeah.
not stupid. It's a frustrating. It's not stupid.
Frustrating.
It's
I
frustrating.
know, because I think a lot of people when they come at writing, either like when I first started writing, it was just like I'm just gonna pants it, seat of my pants, write it, no outline. Wow, this is fun. Look at all this stuff, and not until you learn more about the craft of writing, and then you go back and you look at what you've written, and you're like, that is absolute garbage. And
Yeah.
then you think, now that you've learned about writing, you're saying, okay, I need to do this meticulously. I need to come out with an outline. I need to come out with these characters. I have to have character questionnaires. I got to do all of this stuff before I even get to writing the prose itself. And so we get hung up on these processes. And like I remember this last book, I said, you know what? This book, Art of Story, behind me somewhere. I said, you know
Mm,
what? Because I'm having such a trouble with this draft, I'm going to take this book. I'm going to outline it to his plot points. I'm going to go through his methodology and see where I end up. And I remember, as much as I love his methodology and his just thinking behind storycraft, it was kind of a drag because again, I couldn't see my story and my characters on a bulleted list. I have to see
yeah.
them in prose because I'm a very visual writer, and I just keep, even to this day, I'm still trying to find my process. And I feel like I'm throwing my hands up and just saying, you know what? Maybe I just need a rough idea of who these people are and what they're doing and some really rough bullet points, story points, and then just go and call that a draft 0, 0.5, whatever. Maybe it's not even a first draft. And hopefully by the end of that, I have a better sense of who these people are and what the story is. And then I can maybe take that and put it in a bulleted list then and look at it from afar, you know?
Yeah. I think that's a good method, actually. I know it's, well, it's funny. You said about like character sheets.
Hmm.
I didn't start a character sheet until this 4th draft that I'm doing. Uh, and I was like, oh yeah, because I knew the characters, so I could answer the stupid questions in those character sheets instead of, which is very often the problem. Uh, when you don't know the character, you'll you'll open that character sheet and you'll start just making stuff up.
Hmm.
Right? What's his favorite color?
Yeah. What's your favorite ice cream? Their
All
food.
that,
You're like,
and it's so contrived.
yeah, it's
It's so
uninformed.
forced.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now, when I'm on my fourth draft, I can answer the questions and, um, maybe expand on them instead of just like making them up from scratch.
Yeah.
But it's an arduous process, and I mean, I envy the people who can just spit out books every month. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it.
I don't either. That is not me, not by a long shot.
Yeah.
Well, it's been awesome talking with you. I want to be conscious of your time, but
Mm,
I have a couple more questions, but before I ask those,
sure.
why don't you let everybody know where they can find you?
Sure. So, well, when you buy the book, and I would buy the book, it's just 99 cents, guys, right now, the ebook. So you'll find me on. I don't even know why I'm showing you this. I could just tell you it's matsevensson.com. One word. Yeah. Oh shit.
Maybe
You
it'll
actually have a
focus.
good
There we
camera.
go. There we go.
Um,
Focus.
yeah, and you can find all my socials on there. The problem is that I think my Twitter is in a cube, and my Instagram is the Swedish translation en cube. But you're American. You're gonna type ee. What did he say? En cube. Ian. What's that? Uh, so yeah, just go to my website. Sign up for the newsletter. I would,
Yeah.
uh, and hopefully I'll have a short story that you will be able to read for free. Now that I've said that, I need to actually set that up. Um, Good motivation. Um,
You have a little bit of time before this video goes live, so
True. Uh, yeah. So matsevensson.com. Go there. There's a couple of cool pictures that are not in the book,
cool.
obviously.
There you go.
And yeah, it was expensive setting up the website, so it'd be cool if it had just a little bit of traffic. That'd be nice.
Yeah, websites are weird. I mean, I have a personal website, but I wonder, everything seems to be veering towards social media versus
Yeah.
visiting personal sites. I mean, I think you still need a site, obviously, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know how useful personal websites are anymore, but I think still got to have them for now anyway.
Yeah. I think for self published authors, I think the website is far more important than for like Stephen King
Oh yeah,
or Neil Gaiman.
for sure.
Um, like we talked about, well, not today, we didn't, but Adam Neville's. We're reading his book on Jason's channel right now, which you should subscribe and hit the notification bell.
Oh, look at that.
Um,
I should cut that out and then just put it on every video now.
and now to a sponsor, Squarespace. Um, but yeah, like yeah. So Adam Neville. Uh, what's the other guy's name? Ian Rob Wright. Um, the British guy. And I know you've talked about a bunch of other authors who are self-published, and their websites are often very informative.
Hmm.
And you can find, yeah, for some reason, self-published authors do like to share their tips and tricks in the business and for writing and storytelling. Um, Much more so than, for example, Stephen King.
Hmm.
He has one book on writing, and
Great book too. Still a great book, but yeah, one book.
but he's selling that book. He's not
Yeah.
giving it up for free.
Yep.
But like self-published writers, I think they think more about the collective.
Yeah.
Uh, um,
Yeah, it's less. I feel like self-published writers, they look at other people less as competitors and more of a community. That's
yeah,
one thing I've seen. And I don't know. Maybe the trad pub people are the same way. I have no idea how. I feel like with traditional publishing, the art is so separate from the business because generally you're just the creator selling your story for however much money the advance is, and then everybody, and then a company takes care of everything else. Whereas when you're indie, you got to do all of it.
No.
So there's a lot more knowledge sharing, and I found that traditional authors don't know jack about marketing or anything like that. A lot of publishers don't either. You can see the indie space running circles around them in terms of like Amazon ads and Instagram ads and BookBub, and they know it better than the big guys. So it's interesting. All right, well, I have two more questions. The
All right.
first question is, and now we know I like to always admit that we are a product of what we consume. So, and I always recommend people to read often if you're going to be a writer. So, if you, what's a book that you've read or are reading now that you say that you would recommend someone to pick up?
Well, it's funny you should say that. This is not rehearsed. So I got this book,
Ah,
Susan Hill, The Woman in Black. I'm actually reading it again for, I don't know, the fifth time or something. I really love this book. And obviously, for those of you who don't know, this was turned into a movie with Daniel Radcliffe. You saw him in Lord of the Rings. He was great. And yeah, he was one of those barefoot dudes. And I think this is such an interesting book. First of all, it's well, it's not scary, but it's atmospheric.
atmospheric.
Very, very atmospheric, and it's short. I mean, it's actually shorter than my book by, I think, 15,000 words.
Wow.
Imagine that.
40,000 ish.
Listen, my book is 60.
Okay.
So roughly 45,000 words
Okay.
turned into not one movie, but there's got to be at least 2 adaptations of The Woman in Black,
Really?
plus a garbage sequel that I don't recommend. And the sequel got a novelization for whatever reason. And I think it's super interesting, both as a like learning how to write. Watch Susan Hill build up this atmosphere of this haunted house and the small island. That's weird. Small island.
An island? No way.
That's actually okay. I'm gonna let you in on. Well, I'm gonna finish my thought first, and then I'm gonna let you in on the secret. Well, I forgot my thought, but yeah, she is a great writer, and I think she is showing here that a short horror story is as viable as a long, like my book, for example, which is a lot longer. It didn't have to be that long. And for traditional agents or literary agents who are looking for books that are like 60,000 words, which is why my book is 60,000 words, because I thought I would get an agent. Like, this book proves that you don't have to do that. This is a brilliant book. Like I said, 2 movies and a sequel, and a Hobbit, and you don't really need to write a long story. Just tell your story, like you say. Like, tell your story and don't worry about like the word count.
Never worry about the word count, because we chatted about this offline too, but the whole history of why, books are the length they are is typically because these mass markets, were manufactured to be a certain size and a certain page length to fit on store shelves. There's no reason why 60,000 words, 80,000 words is how long a story should be. It's strictly a marketing ploy that is completely useless now. It's obsolete. So I'm actually a fan of shorter stories. I think partially it's because I'm not a very fast reader, and partially because I really love, smaller, intimate tales. Right? It's the camera's brought in closer than this a sweeping epic like Game of Thrones or something like that. I love that stuff too, but There's just something so much more personal about a single POV or a very few amount of POVs in a short
Yeah.
page. And I think horror is particularly effective at a shorter length because if you've read any Stephen King, you'll know that like there's some cool ideas in there, but then it's always in the middle of hundreds and hundreds of pages of just why is this here?
Yeah.
So the dread ceases to be. But before I let you go,
Hmm.
what is next for you? What are you working on?
Well, I'm writing a prequel to The Beast. Um, or, well, a sort of prequel. The problem with the biggest problem with The Beast is that it's set in 1905. So 4 years. Uh, the Victoria the Victorian era ended in 1901, and if you listen back to any weird recordings you have where some idiot is saying 1903 the entire time, spit in his face. Um, but so the problem is that if I want to keep writing Victorian about the Victorian era, I can't write sequels to this book. So I'm going to have to write prequels instead. So that's basically what I'm doing. Um, I'm writing a sort of shared universe story set in London in 1887, the year before Jack the Ripper.
Oh, okay. Any working title, or is that still up in the air?
The working title, well, actually, the working title is uh, Tormento Mori,
Wow.
which is it's bullshit Latin. Um,
Not
so
pig Latin, bullshit Latin.
yeah, it's Memento Mori means think of death or remember death. Uh, but Tormento Mori, to me, I thought, it sounds like it means think of torture, but it doesn't. Tormento Mori, it just means torment death, basically.
Ah,
Um, because I didn't know which word in the Latin phrase was referencing death. Was it memento, which is time based, right?
yeah,
Death,
yeah, yeah.
time,
No, I still
more,
think it's
it's
cool.
just a
I think that's the power of the written word, man. Especially with fiction, you can change it, you can change the meaning, and but I
yeah.
think it has a nice ring to it. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I know we talked about that title a long time ago, but yeah, it has a real title that will sort of follow in the footsteps of the Beast more. Um, but yeah, so I'm writing that, and then I'm going to start working as a teacher. I'm thinking it'd be nice to get out into the sunlight again, emerge from the narrow tunnels of my mind. Um, what? And uh, so yeah, that's what's next. And then I'm hopefully gonna write a third book. I want to write a trilogy.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm in the
Um,
midst of that for sure.
so
I think I'm more of a single book guy
mm,
from here on out, but I got to finish the trilogy. I got to finish it.
exactly, it's just something to do. Basically,
Yeah.
it's like yeah, uh, it can be your main project, a long-lasting main project, and then everything else that you write is like yeah, it's a side story or
Yeah.
yeah, it's a side project. But I'm still gonna finish the third book or the fourth book
Yeah.
or whatever. Are you ready for the bonus content now? Okay,
Okay, what's the bonus content? Let's hear it.
okay. So check this out. I'm gonna adjust my knees. All right. So in the movie, The Woman in Black, Daniel Radcliffe has to go to a eel marsh house, which is on a secluded island tethered to the mainland by a causeway that was built by the Romans uh, back in, in ancient Roman times. And what's this book? Oh yeah, St. Ender is tethered to the mainland by a causeway. Whoa! And in fact, the island that I'm basing St. Ender on is an actual island in Essex in England, and you can actually see it in the movie where he takes they actually go on the actual causeway to Osea Island in, that's probably not how you pronounce it, but Osea Island in Essex, in the Blackwater, from Game of Thrones, by the way. That's right. The Blackwater is a river, or I don't know, let's call it a river in England. That's where George R. Martin got his the name. But I've named it the Greywater.
Oh,
because clever.
Clever man. Cool.
So that's a bonus, and I mean, cut this if you want. But Westeros, by the way, or Westeros. While we're on the topic of George R. R. Martin, Västerås, that's in Sweden. That's a city in Sweden that he just took that name, changed it a bit to, take out the weird A with a dot over it, and changed it from V to W. But that's where the name of his continent comes from.
Interesting. Where did what does that mean?
That's where my aunt lives, or aunt lives.
What's the translation to Swedish, or from Swedish?
It means Western Hill, basically.
Okay.
Ås is a burial hill.
Got it.
And there's also he's got an island called Skane, or Skane rather. But you have been to Skåne, where he got that name. He just took out the dot over the A, just got rid of that and called it Skane instead. But so I think that when you, sorry.
No, I was gonna say, so Martin, if you're listening, we know your secrets.
Yeah, we're on to you, dude.
Yeah, we're on to you.
Anyway, I just thought that was fun, I like that. I like that whole everything is connected. Sort of, there are no coincidences. I like that. It's scary and weird and cool.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, on that note, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for taking the time. And everybody, go check out The Beast of St. Ender. Highly recommend it. I have read this book. It's on sale right now for 99 cents on Amazon. So, Mats, thank you again. It's been a blast. We'll have to do it again sometime. Yeah, you can get my book too if you'd like. This
is third. If you're watching this, by the way, you should know that Jason's first book is now number 1. It's a bestseller. It's on the bestseller list, right? That's what they call it.
Yeah, of free ebooks. Yeah, I have to. I have to qualify it with it's free, but yeah.
In front of Neil Gaiman, actually, I mean, in front of everyone.
Number 1 in contemporary literary fiction right now. So
exactly, which is fucking awesome. And you guys should definitely, if you got a Kindle or a Kindle app, download it for free.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the plug, man.
Read it and stuff. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll let you go for real now, and we'll have to do it again, dude. I love chatting with you. Maybe we can do something before your next book where it's just us hanging out talking about story, because I know we could do that for a long time. So everybody who's watching, like I said, go check out The Beast of St. Ender. It's on sale. You got a week to pick it up for 99 cents. Let us know what you thought in the comments. And also join our Discord. So I have a Discord. You can speak directly to Mats there. He's very active, obviously, as well. And we talk about books and storytelling and everything else. So until the next one, we'll see you guys later. Bye.